I don't want to talk about it. Sometimes we think the safest path is avoidance when we're confronted with having a hard conversation. Our guest has a framework to help you have those hard conversations, especially around race, finding those impeccable words, right? Hey, it's Fab Female Founder Friday on the Startup Life Live Show. Let's glow, everyone, and have a delicious conversation. Woohoo! Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Startup Life Live Show. I'm your host, Ande Lyons, 4 times founder and startup champion. To all you founders around the world, I'm cheering you on every day and everywhere I glow. And after having raised 4 businesses of my own, I know exactly what you're crawling through on a daily basis. And I am grateful that you carved out time to up your founder game by tuning in, as well as cheering on a fellow founder. You see, you can grab incredible solutions, strategies, inspiration, or just feel less isolated when you tune into the show. And that's going to help you do better, which will help your business do better. And so if you're watching on video, hello to my wonderful podcast listeners. If you're watching a video here, because we're live on LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, please take a moment and click that like button. And if you're watching on YouTube and you haven't done so already, please click the subscribe button. I got to tell you, I'm only like 45 subscribers away from hitting that magic 1000K number on YouTube. And that helps me reach more founders around the world. So I'm so grateful for your support. And to receive an alert whenever I post a new show, please join the Startup Life Live meetup group. This is where you'll get an alert, and you never know. It could be a founder that's in your industry, and you could go and learn how they did it all and figured it out and grab some incredible gems. So be sure to join that group. And I don't know, did you know, as I said hi to all my wonderful podcast listeners, you can tune in to the Startup Life Live Show anytime. Just hop on either to my website or to your favorite podcast. And then if you're feeling really like, wow, I am resonating with what's going down at the Startup Life Live Show and our mission for amplifying diverse founder voices while serving first-time founders, please reach out to me, because your sponsorship will help us have a greater impact on the startup ecosystem all over the world. So thank you for that. So it's time to introduce our amazing guest today. I'm just going to bring up her new book cover while I talk about her. And here we go. It is the amazing Dr. Nancy Dome, and she's a renowned speaker, author, and equity consultant. And she co-founded Epoch Education in 2014 to provide leaders in education and business with accessible professional development and diversity, inclusion, and belonging and equity. But here's what we're talking about today, her new book, Let's Talk About Race and Other Hard Things. Nancy provides a framework to recognize feelings, interrupt flawed patterns, and repair relationships. And we're going to learn so much from this remarkable founder and author. Let me bring Nancy into the room. Woohoo! Welcome, Dr. Nancy Dome.
Thank you. Hello. Good morning.
I'm so happy you're here to share all your wonderful words of wisdom with us. Where are you located? Where are you hanging out from today?
Right now I'm in San Diego.
Oh, can we just get like a temperature?
Well, it was 90 yesterday, if you can believe that. So it's going to be a warm one this weekend.
Oh, well, here in Boston, we love hearing living vicariously from those of you in the warmer climates. Oh, hello to one of our favorite Boston female cheerleaders, helping women up their game every single day. Erin, so happy to see you here today, and hello to you. And yes, Erin's saying, please send the warmth our way. Although, come on, it's going to be 50 today, Erin, so we're feeling darn good about that. And Mia, she's listening from the job site. Everybody, you've got to follow Mia and her incredible podcast, Shit We Don't Talk About. She goes there with her guests, bringing all those great topics and those hard conversations like Nancy's today to help folks do better. But she also wears a hard hat and has been for 20 years. as a building inspector for commercial sites.
Mm.
So that's a multi-talented goddess right there. So happy to see you, Mia. So Nancy, I'm always curious as to how people land in the entrepreneurship world. Oh, but before I get started, I can't believe I almost forgot to do this. Hey, everybody, I got to pull this up. Guess what we're doing today? I'm giving away a copy of Nancy's book. So please, please, please post hashtag startup life in the comment section and I will enter you to win. It's very easy. At the end of the show, I just push a button on the StreamYard button and off we go. And we have this great experience. All right. So put it in there and make it happen. So, Nancy, back to my question regarding how did you end up in entrepreneurship? Because you're a seasoned educator. And I'm just curious, how did this transition happen?
Yeah, you know what? It's expect it when you least expect it. I never ever thought I would own a business. I never wanted to. I was actually quite happy getting a regular paycheck from somebody else and just kind of showing up and doing my job. But I've also always been this person that if opportunity arises, then I usually step through the door. And I was working for my employer and I was becoming disenchanted, which doesn't really work well for me ever. And I started playing with the idea of maybe being able to start my own business. And literally one day we were having a meeting. He was having all of us reapply for our jobs, which was an interesting process.
Oh,
And
come on.
yeah, that's a whole nother story,
Who does that?
Well, there
Talk
you
about
go.
helping people feel like they're like they belong.
Yes.
Not.
Yeah. So he and his assistant asked me if I had anything for the agenda. And I said, yes. And he said, what is it? And I said, I am not reapplying. And it was in that moment, truly without a plan, I was just like, this is the time. And I can tell you that it felt like the skies opened up and the angels sang and all this weight. I was happy. And I knew in that moment it was the right decision. Now, mind you, no plan. An idea, but no plan. I knew what I could do. I knew what I wanted to do. I'd been thinking about it, but I just kind of leapt in.
Yeah.
And that was the beginning.
Wow, that is such a great story. And I know people listening or watching right now can give me a high five and a fist bump because we've been there.
Yeah.
And sometimes it just becomes unacceptable where we're working. And we don't have a plan, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you're saying I'm not reapplying. How did he respond to that?
There was a shock of kind of like, oh, well, then I guess we need to start there. And that's what we did. And it was, it was an amicable ending. I a lot of what I learned from him and working in that space. And I know through working in that space, it gave me the courage to know that I could also do it myself, but do it in a way that was more resonant with who I am and what I want to put out in the world. And so that was a great gift. I'll never minimize that at all. But also, he gave me the gift through his process of really letting go and being willing to take a risk. And I felt like it was a risk worth taking.
And did you have any role models in your life? Like, were you yourself hustling in elementary school, or one of your parents an entrepreneur, or was this just, well, I guess I'm going to do this now?
I think not really any role models, not anyone personal that had done it, except for, the person I was working for at the time. My mom, though, is a hustler. I mean, she was a Black, R&B blues singer, very young, very pretty, but, really, in the 70s, she looked too young to have experience in blues. And so it was very hard for her to get gigs. And she went to Europe and reinvented herself over there and ended up staying over there. And so I, definitely the hustle I get from my mom and they made it happen. And, she also, I think a lot of my inspiration from her was just that she stepped up and stepped out into these spaces where, just no one had been there really before her. And she just took a risk. She just did it.
And she role modeled that for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's key. I love that comment about she didn't look old enough to have the blues.
Yeah. And we forget though.
Oh God, are you kidding? Everybody knows the gateway to all the crap in your life comes from your childhood. So
yeah, well, and also my mom had her first kid at 15 and was married at 15, and then 16, 17, and my sister and I when she was 24. So I think there's some blues in that.
Yeah. Oh, there's a lot of blues. I'm a huge fan of the blues, and I can feel her blues right now. I'm just going to say a quick hello, Amy Gedden. Amy has this wonderful platform, Aloha, and it's where you can just have a daily conversation around a word to help people shift off all the anger and conflict going on today. And she's just amazing. And Nicole, I'm so happy to see you. I can't wait to get you on the show. This is an innovator. This is a woman who is out there with a business and making things happen. Everybody remember, please, let me just throw this up here and remind you all, because we love to amplify what you're working on. I'm going to bring it up here. Oh, here it comes. Amplify your brand. Share your business name, one-liner, and website URL in the comments, and we will showcase and celebrate you and your wonderful work in the world live. Because remember, this is an evergreen conversation, podcast as well as video. So people will bump into this down the road, and it'll be great for them to learn about you. I think I got everybody. Yeah. Aaron saying, cannot imagine being married at 15. Exactly. And Aaron Mia is also saying, hold on, stop it. Should we don't talk about podcasts? Love it. Yes, you will love it. It's a terrific, and nobody interviews like Mia. Mia just has this ability, Nancy, to start conversations. She does this live thing on Facebook on Friday. She might be putting on her makeup, making a cocktail, and just connecting with people. She's really extraordinary. And here's the URL for Daily Aloha. So it's Daily Aloha, HALOHA.com. Amy, thank you so much for making our world a better place, one word and conversation at a time. You're amazing. All right. So Nancy, so did you run into like your co-founder and say, let's bring this conversation at Epoch Education, educating people in the school systems as well as business to have good conversations and do the right thing versus asking people to reapply for their job. How did that happen?
Well, so the co-founder is my twin sister. So that's also one thing I have to say. And she's always been one of the greatest supporters of me. She's an attorney. She is in education, but she chose the law as her avenue, and I chose the education side of it. And so she had a thriving law firm supporting student services and special education in schools. And so she was my first angel investor. She was the one who said, you know what, you can do this. You don't need to be in this environment that's, toxic to you, and let's do it. And so we did it together. She helped me, she took care of the legal aspects of it. I took care of the education aspects and the curriculum and all that. And she seeded the money and then also helped me find our first investors to kind of get the business going in the first year.
I love that, something fierce. And now I understand, because your sister being an attorney was able to really help you launch and take care of those legal documents. Remember, everybody, the most important person on your dream team is your attorney. Yes. Hands down. They will protect you and take good care of you. And this is because one of my big questions for folks who are delivering like you are, how did you choose incorporation, for-profit versus nonprofit?
Yeah, and that was a hard choice because I always thought we would be a nonprofit. And the more we actually hired, because she's education law, this business is not her specialty. So we hired an attorney, but she had all the legalese, which was super helpful. And we talked to him and we talked to other people. And really the feedback was that, I think the thing with education is that we're so conditioned that we are not supposed to make money. And that was a big hurdle. And I would say probably still a hurdle that I'm constantly getting over, making sure that my fees aren't too high because I want it to be accessible and I want people to do this work. And so it really is a mind shift to think that I can be an educator and I don't have to be a starving one. I don't have to have a roommate to keep my house in San Diego, that I can actually live on my own and pay my own bills and, fancy that. But it is a hard, we've really conditioned educators in this country to not expect much, to give a lot without a lot in return. And that's actually why I left education, was because as much as I love teaching and I mean, leaving my kids was probably one of the hardest things I ever had to do. But I also was tired of being poor, and that's for real. I was tired of struggling living in
Absolutely.
California.
What I
So
would always hear from teachers is starve with dignity. I
yeah,
mean, your role is so important. Of course, today it's a lot even harder,
yes,
but that mindset, you're absolutely right. And we always equate, why can't we pay them? We pay our ball players, right? Our
yeah,
sports folks so well. And hope, women are starting to get paid equally, not really, but we'll get there. That's a hard conversation. But
yes,
you're right. Our educators need to be honored by salary. And there's got to be a better way to fund what they're doing and not just the town's taxes and resources. There's
yes.
got to be some other kind of, I don't know, fund to help that. So I love that you brought that up. And so share just, one or two of the stories of, building Epoch Education, because as a female founder, you had to struggle through what all of us have to, which is proving your value prop, proving that
Mhm.
people wanted what you were selling. Did you have, any social capital that you were able to use? Were there phone calls you were able to make because you had been in the industry for a while that helped you, or did you start cold calling?
No, you know what? It really was. I did have social capital in that, having been an educator, because I was always ambitious, I didn't just stay in the classroom. I was a mentor teacher. I was a distinguished teacher in residence. I was a teacher in special assignment. And so I had a lot of opportunities to present at conferences like AERA, which is a huge education conference for higher ed. I had opportunities to present throughout California. So when I did go on my own, a lot of people had already seen me, and they seen me
Great.
in action. And so, and then with my sister being legal counsel for a lot of school districts, there was a nice kind of warm introduction into some of the schools. And then literally it was, a couple of my first clients just saying, being used to working with larger firms, but saying, okay, I'm gonna support you because I know that you're gonna do good work. And also, like I said, they couldn't beat the price
Yeah.
because I was like, I'm gonna make it so that you can't say no to me. And so those first few clients who gave me, the support, and then word of mouth. I mean, we literally did not start actively marketing until this last year, and I'm now in year 7, and we
Mhm.
are so busy, and it's word of mouth, but we do good work. So
Yeah, so it's easy to
yeah.
get out there, and you've got the creds and you've got the
Mhm.
the track record that makes everybody happy. And so let's go back to when you had to raise money for the organization. Did your sister help you out with that? Whose doors did you knock on, or did folks show up and say, "How can I help?" How did that go?
Yeah, we did a friends and family first. That was
There.
the first, and we sent it out to friends and family. We did a contract that a lawyer helped us put together. We offered 5% return, and the one thing for me was that even if I guess in my mind I never accepted that the business would not work, but there was always this thought that if for some reason it didn't, what they knew was that they were going to get their money back, whether
Oh,
it wasn't going to be, even though our legally we didn't have to, like if it didn't work, then
right.
it's kind of a lost cost. But for me, when friends and family, and when people are taking that risk, especially friends and family who may not have quite the depth of resources that other angels have, I really wanted to ensure that you're going to get your money back. And we were able to pay it back in 2 years. And then some people reinvested, and they, with the market, they weren't getting 5% back in any stock market at that time, you know what I mean, unless they
Right.
were having very aggressive
Right.
investments. And so that money was, they were making money, and they, everyone got paid back. And then actually all the debt that I had, I cleared all my debt by year
Oh,
4, which was pretty significant. Even yeah, yeah,
come on, because
yeah,
years as a starving teacher, and
yeah.
then, building up the debt and all of that, being able to do that, I got to tell you, that had to have felt wonderful.
Oh yeah, it was a celebration. It was when I made that last payment for that initial investment, because my sister was the biggest investor in 6 figures, and to pay her off and to
Mm.
know that the business was 100% truly free of debt and thriving
And
was yeah,
profitable and sustainable. That's a
yes.
beautiful place to be. And folks, when we were talking earlier this week with James from the Black Parentpreneur Foundation, that's his whole mission, is to make sure Black parentpreneurs get the skill
Mhm.
sets and the support and the connections, the network, funding, whatever he can do to help them so for legacy reasons, so they have money to pay off their debt and use and leverage their business to leave a legacy for their beautiful Black children, is how he phrases it. But that's wonderful, and I'm so happy for that outcome. And I know it was hard work, and I know your mom was coming through you with that tenacity and ability to persevere and work hard and hustle. And what a great story about your having your twin sister arm in arm there with you. So what is your vision for Epoch Education today?
So we continue to grow. I'm trying to do a little bit of separation. This thing of founder syndrome, it's a real thing, and I really want to get out of my way, right? I want to get out of the way of Epoch thriving. And I think that as far as the business side, I've pretty much pulled myself away because I got people who do it better. I mean, that's in the beginning when I started, I was the HR, I was the tech person, I was everything. And so to actually now be able to pay for really high quality people in these areas. I've got a COO, Susan Callender, who is amazing, and a CIO, Kelly Cole, who's also amazing.
Love it.
It's really given me freedom. And so what I'm kind of moving towards now is I've kind of branched off into drnancydome.com, where I get to do more of the things that really brought me joy in the first place. I am an educator, so I love the public speaking. I love the motivational speaking. I love the coaching. And so I get to actually focus on that instead of focusing on all the kind of, the business stuff that just isn't my thing. Let someone else do it and let them do it better. And I'm all for it.
As we say here in Boston, you're wicked smart to surround yourself with the right people who can keep your business going when you are not there.
Yes.
All right. That is so important, to empower them so that they feel like they are owning it.
Yes.
And that is so important. I'm just going to bring up Dr. Nancy Dome here just to share with everybody your website for just a quick second here. And that's just wonderful, Nancy. You're rocking it there. That's just great. I'll bring it in again as we continue our conversation. I want to remind everybody, we got a book giveaway today here. Enter to win a free copy of Let's Talk About Race. Just post #StartupLife in the comments. And at the end, I run that wonderful StreamYard wheel of fortune type of thing. And it randomly chooses one of the hashtags. And you could be the winner of this incredible book, because Nancy does provide a framework for how to have hard conversations. And folks, just like any other of your founder skill sets, having hard conversations is important. You want that in your toolkit. You want to always be ready to have the right language. You don't want to be caught off guard, and you don't want to ruin relationships. So Nancy, what called you to write this book? I mean, becoming an author is a huge commitment and endeavor. Were you just at the beach one day? What happened?
So the protocol, that compassionate dialogue, it started off first. The framework kind of grew, but we started off with the RIR protocol, and I was doing this. I co-created it with a colleague, Dr. Jeffries, when I was teaching at Cal State San Marcos, and we presented this idea, and it actually grew out of this experience that Jennifer had when she walked into a district office and they were hiring. And the sign said certificated personnel applications one way, and then it said non-essential personnel applications the other way. And when you think about who is non-essential in a school district, like who, and so that kind of was the birth of it. And so we started, like, how do we interrupt that kind of language? How do we and we called it tragedy of non-ness, this non-white, non-English speaker, when we're always referring to people outside of what has been considered the norm as non. And so the protocol was born there, and that was about 20 years ago. And so I realized after we presented it a couple of times that it really had, like, I was using it in my daily life. And so I just kept developing it, and I kept leaning into it. And then I started teaching it. And, then I realized what was missing was that that compassion piece, that piece that says, we're going to have these hard conversations, but we're going to do it with empathy and respect for one another. And so, we were doing it, but what happens is our clients were asking questions like, well, that's great, Nancy, that we can do it when you're in the room with us, but how do we do it outside of the room?
Got it.
How do we continue to kind of live this? And so the book was really inevitable, but a couple things happened, which was in 2004 is when I got my doctorate. And the one thing I will say is that a doctoral program is traumatic, and I think it's an exercise in resilience, and more
Yes.
so than any, like, I mean, you're learning, and I don't want to minimize that, but it's really about resiliency. But it took me about 5 or 6 years before I even wanted to read or write anything again.
Oh
And
my
so,
gosh, yeah. I had one friend who's a PhD. She said, during my doctorate, I would go into the bathroom with a toothbrush because I would rather do that than work on my doctorate dissertation because it had a beginning, a middle, and an end, right?
yes,
And I
yes,
felt great.
yes,
Whereas,
absolutely.
that tenacity and persistence and
Yeah,
consistency,
yeah,
I believe those are some of the foundational skills you learn to prepare you, through that lived experience to
absolutely,
prepare you to be a founder because
absolutely.
your
I believe
doctorate,
it.
what a great experience.
Yeah,
And
I
so, but
believe it.
I understand the shock of it all is, I felt the same way after I earned my MBA. It's like, please don't even talk to me about
Nothing, yeah,
anything.
about anything. But it did become time, and I found the words, and I kind of feel like now that it's out, I feel like I've birthed a child. It's in the world, and what it has done is open the floodgates. So now I'm writing all the time, and I'm writing short stories, and so
Oh,
I finally have reconnected with that part, and it was just time, but it was really, the clients really pushing me and saying we need something, and then you'll know if you read the book is that it's really filled with a lot of it's very approachable, a lot of case studies of people
right.
using the protocol and their experience using the
Oh,
protocol. And so also I think part of the timing was, now that I've been in business for going on my 7th year, having that qualitative feedback, reinforcement that the protocol works.
okay. So
And so
I want to bring up something. Let me just bring this up because this is from your website.
uh-huh.
And for my wonderful listeners, we're looking here at facing fear, avoidance, and division head on. And some of the quotes that
Hmm.
Nancy has on the website is all conservatives are racists.
Hmm.
All liberals are socialists. We all know blacks and Mexicans are more likely to be criminals. I would never have guessed you were gay. Women shouldn't be leaders. They're too emotional. She's so unprofessional. She must be a millennial.
Hmm.
Boy, do we hear that a lot. Oh, those
Hmm.
millennials, boy, are they getting hammered. That's, really remarkable that you do that. And so I really encourage everybody to go check out and our wonderful podcast listeners as well. Go check out Let's Talk About Race and Other Hard Things by Nancy Dome. Go grab a copy. And for those of you who are tuning in, you know what to do. Just add hashtag startup life into the comment section and we will draw a winner at the end of the conversation. Can you just explain for everybody what is compassionate dialogue? I can have an assumption of what that means, but what is the term? How would you
It
define
really
it?
is about having a conversation, to resolve an issue, but doing it with through empathy and with the intent of trying to connect, right?
Yay.
And so it becomes less about me trying to change your mind or say you're wrong and I'm right, and it has more to do with seeking to understand each other and seeing if we can find some common ground, some commonality that keeps us connected as opposed to dividing us. And so, like those quotes that you read
Mm-hmm.
were real quotes, so that we have these things called conversation starters. And what we did was we solicited all of our clients, because having these conversations are hard, and I said, well, write down any kind of microaggression, anything that you've ever heard, that, and the only caveat is that you were not comfortable enough to respond. So if someone said something that you felt like, okay, I'm going to respond, that wasn't what we were looking for. We were looking for those statements that really kind of took you back, that made you want to disengage, and that you didn't respond to. And so all those statements are things that, and this is in the education world, that teachers had heard and administrators had heard, that had either been said to them or near them, and they're feeling like, oh, that cringe, like you just did, but not knowing how to engage.
Well, and for someone like me who will prefer to say hold my beer and get jump into the bar fight.
Awesome.
I'm terrible that way. What do you mean by that? And I but and I know I'm supposed to be taking a deep breath, but what I
Mhm.
love about your book, Let's Talk About Race, is that you start showing us what we can say that can
Yeah.
work. And
Yes.
so talk us through the process. So when you're a female founder and you're pitching, right? I mean, I cannot tell you some of these incredibly brilliant female tech founders, Nancy, that
Hmm.
they'll be there. And sometimes they have a male co-founder and it's like she doesn't
Yes.
exist,
Yes.
or they say things that and you want to go say what, and you can't go and bitch slap the investor for saying that right in the moment. What can they do?
Yeah, so the recognize, it's RIR, so recognize, interrupt, repair. And the R is first recognizing what feeling comes up for you and exactly why, because you don't want to slap them. So you recognize and say, okay, I'm angry and I'm frustrated. And if I don't ride that emotional wave, I might actually do something I'm going to regret. And
Right.
so it allows you to first figure out what's happening in your body and then to get that under control.
Right.
And it gives you time. So the interrupt is really about inquiry. So what I would say is that if someone were to put me in that position, is I would ask a question. And what asking that question, like, what is your intention behind that? Are you like whatever that stem is that makes sense in the situation, you ask it, and what it does is it puts the responsibility back on the other person to explain themselves,
Got
and
it.
it gives you a minute to catch your breath so that you can. Because I always say I'm a genius 10 minutes after the event. If I could think of what 10 minutes later, I could really say what I need to say. But in that moment I can't. So what you do by using that strategy of
And
inquiry,
can you do the RAR again for me?
it's recognize, interrupt, and then repair.
RIR.
RIR. Yeah.
Interrupt and repair, because I want to have that into the chapters for the show
Yeah.
notes. That's so good.
Yeah.
Because okay, everybody who's listening or watching, you've been there. You're
Hmm.
like, what? And you're
Yeah.
stumped, right? And then gosh, you're lying in bed that night and you say, oh, if I had said this, that would
That's
have
right.
felt great, right? I would have
Yes.
nailed it. So how does one recognize and interrupt and repair in a situation where, because I am a firm believer, and we can't prepare for everything, right?
Hmm.
But if we can have some words that we can
Hmm.
use, how does that work, Nancy?
Yeah, I think we actually can. So one is practice. So we do practice, and that's why we have those cards.
Yeah.
But having that statement, what is that one question that that you can fall back on? And so for me, it's usually like, tell me more about that, depending on what's coming. Like, tell me what you mean, and asking for clarification. And again, one, I want to make sure that I'm hearing what I think I'm hearing, but also, again, it's giving me just a little bit of time to catch my breath and think about what I'm really feeling and what I need to say, what needs to come out. And so asking a question, if you can't ask a question, the interrupt can also be really sharing the impact of the statement, like, how that made you feel, and which calls for us to be vulnerable, which
Right.
is, I think, kind of counterintuitive to how we would normally engage, because we think if we're defensive, then we don't want to be vulnerable, but really vulnerability is our power. So me letting like, that triggered me, are you intending to do that? Let's get to the bottom of this quickly, because I'm more like, let's get into it, but I'm going to do it in a way where I'm going to let you explain to me what your intention is.
That's
you know
right. And
yeah.
I wish they would do this more in our TV shows and movies. They usually
Mm,
always have the worst role models in that, and we need to hear more about how we can respond, and especially in that moment. And especially, I'm just going to come back to when you're raising money,
yeah.
and these VCs are not woke.
Yeah.
Okay, they are just not tuned in. They're not thinking, and especially for our female founders and our female founders of color,
Yeah.
just really gets really hard. And you want to honor the fact that they can write a check and could come into your business and really have an impact, but at the same time they're not going to be a fit if you can't make that
Right.
relationship and that connection. So, and it's not that you maybe want them as an investor, but you certainly don't want to burn a bridge with
Right,
them.
of course, of course. And I think that is a really difficult place that we find ourselves in, is, needing the capital,
Yep.
and in some ways, I think sometimes feeling like we have to sell our soul to get it, right? And really being clear on what is the mission and vision? What do you want to accomplish? And maybe it's not a good partnership, right? Actually being able to say no. And I know that in starting my business in the beginning, I didn't feel like I could say no to anything.
Yeah.
And so part of it was really just sitting with myself and understanding, the consequences of my choices, and just deciding that I needed to be integrity for myself. I needed to be in partnership with people who really were at least trying to understand what I was trying to accomplish, right?
Right.
You didn't have to be perfect. You didn't have to be, a master at it. But if it was just a money dump, then that I wasn't interested, because eventually it was gonna come back and bite me in the rear.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's not our job sometimes to educate folks. I mean, sometimes you have to just take a pass,
Mm-hmm.
right? Or
Mm-hmm.
you don't have to be Stephen Covey on every
Yeah.
every time sitting down. Well, let me
Yeah.
better understand where you're
Yeah.
coming from.
Yeah.
Some people just it's gonna go right over their head. But as a mom of a wonderful son who identifies as gay,
Mm-hmm.
he gets this all the time. Oh,
Yeah.
I never would have known you were gay.
Mm.
What can our LGBTQ plus founders say in those moments when something comes out like, really, you're a guy, or you're a woman?
Yeah.
I didn't see that.
Yeah.
How do they respond to that?
It's inquiry. It's like, what a simple question could be, how does that impact our decision to do work? Or, I mean, like, it depends on how direct you want to be. And there's also a place for a little healthy bit of sarcasm sometimes,
Right.
and so, but just understanding that when we use sarcasm, the repair becomes a little harder. Right.
That's
And the
true.
repair is what we want to come back to. So, if someone's saying that, I think it's truly being willing to ask the questions that say, how does that impact our ability to do business? Or is that an issue for you?
Right.
And so it really forces us to get to the bottom. And we say that one of the reasons compassionate dialogue is so important is because it's actually a form of self-care. It's a way that I care for myself by being able to not just eat all those emotions and eat all those feelings, to actually share them in a way that's constructive, where I no longer have to hold on to them.
Right.
I don't have to, because if I don't say it, and I think we talk about people because we don't talk to people. And so if I can clear that air, then there's nothing else. And maybe the repair is divorce. Maybe repair is that we no longer need to work together, or we no longer need to be in relationship together. But at least we've done it through a way that's compassionate. It's not through this kind of ghosting or cancel culture that we see so much,
Oh
that
my
the
gosh.
person that you're not engaging with knows why you're not engaging with them anymore. And I think that's important.
Oh my gosh. And I wrote something down. Now I can't read my comment, but you said something that really, really lit me up and gave me my Antilicious moment for the show. And that's about how we talk to people.
Yeah.
Like, so often we're not talking. And how did you say that? We're not
I
talking.
said, if we, the only reason we talk about people is because we don't talk to them.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. The only reason we
talk about people.
The only reason we talk, I kept wanting to put a negative in there. Thank you for hanging in here with me, listeners and viewers. I just wanted to really nail that down. The reason we talk about people is because
we don't talk to
them.
Yeah.
Woo, and finding out where they're coming from. I agree. Absolutely. Love that, Nancy, says Amy. I'm right there with you. And Mia, she loves sarcasm a little too much. I know. I'm afraid I just watched a little too much of the Bart Simpson and the Simpson family and picked up. But we try to minimize the sarcasm in our family. And especially if you have some kids who are have learning differences, folks, they don't sense what sarcasm is.
Yes.
And so you have to be really careful. One of my questions too is, in the workplace and as a leader and as a founder, we have to not only have this form of dialogue for ourselves, but we're going to be witnessing this within our culture. And so, and also, with founders, folks, a lot of times we are just like head down, hustling, working really hard. And frankly, sometimes if you're not part of the solution, get the hell out of the way. And that could be to your team members or to your family members, right? And so, and get very defensive. How can founders, repair the damage already done by being, focused on meeting their own milestones and their own vision for their business, and have these conversations with their families? What are your thoughts around that?
Yeah, it's just practice. We have to be willing to lean in. And so I can tell you, for my organization, we make the time. And I think that this happens too much with founders, because you are head down. We actually, in the beginning, we had team meetings every week, and there was always a team building time for us to talk about what we were feeling and what's coming up. And, I kind of modeled for them what my expectation was. Again, don't talk about me, talk to me. So if there's something that I'm not doing, if I'm not meeting your need as your CEO and founder, then you need to let me know. And that is my expectation. There's actually more repercussions when you don't, because I don't want to hear about it somewhere else. I want you to tell me. And it's building that muscle, because I started to realize how traumatized some of my employees were from past employment, of being silenced. And most of it, I mean, my company is mostly women and women of color. And, just the things that we had to kind of unpack to get them to this place. And I remember when I laid out my org chart for them, because it took a long time for me to make this, because of course the first one looked like everything else. It looked like this pyramid, right? And then I was like, that's not who we are. You look at our pillars and our mission. And so I kind of, with the work of another CEO, came up with this idea of a soccer pitch, of this level pitch. And everyone, you have your forwards, you have your midfielders, and you have your backcourt. And so I'm in the backcourt with my COO and my assistant and everyone. They're in the front. And so we talked about this movement. And then we really talked about the fact that every position matters. Every role counts in this organization. We cannot do this work without every single person doing their bit. And then the other part was that there was this movement that went up and back. Sometimes I became a midfielder when I had to go train myself. And, so everyone's moving and there's this open communication. And I remember when I showed that, one of my employees said, and she was younger, and she said, I never thought I would work for a company where my voice matters, right? Where people are listening. And so it's this idea that there's this open communication that we do. And so we practice it. And there have been plenty of times when someone just kind of popped out and said, and I'm like, okay, so let's use the protocol. And so we use the protocol, and we expect that everyone uses it. And that means that we're, we need to have we need to have a compassionate dialogue. And so and we're like, okay, let's do it. Let's set up a time and let's have a compassionate dialogue. And that's kind of like our language that says there's something important and it's going to be difficult and we're going to do it. And so that's kind of how we signal each other.
Well, of course, I was thinking I would need to put up like a special, barrier around me because forgetting that, yes, you start off with the premise and the landscape of compassionate dialogue, because, I'd be very clear that as a founder, I would have upset somebody somehow, but they're not going to come after me with knives and forks and flames, right? They're going to come after, and they're going to use compassionate dialogue.
Yeah, that's right. And it makes me better, right? When I can hear them. And what I'm trying to do is create a work environment that people don't want to leave, that they feel that they can be here. Now, mind you, and we're the biggest supporters. If someone does want to leave and be better and do something else, and then you've got my support. It's never going to be about, oh no, and so we do have that. We do have that open communication. Like if you feel like it's time for you to go, how do we help you do that?
Right. And thank you for, being part of this stage of this company's growth.
That's right. That's right.
And your contributions. I have got to stitch that on a pillow moment right here, folks, because I actually loved every position matters and every role counts. Definitely. have that stitched on a pillow on the couch,
Mhm.
because that is so honoring, so often. And I really understand what some of your employees have experienced. I mean, that's why I always say, hello, my name is Ande. I've been unemployable since 1992. Um, I fell off the wagon once and
Mhm.
fired myself quickly. And
Mhm.
then another time they fired me. But
Mhm.
there's so much shame and blame. And
Mhm.
especially if, you were a hustler, if you really wanted to add value, instead of, reining you and helping you focus in with your brilliance and letting you feel great about bringing your ideas
Yeah.
and thoughts to the surface, just shutting you down and pushing you over. Oh boy, every position matters. Every role counts. I love that. Another question I had, um, because in the startup ecosystem, it's crazy. It's messy, right?
Mhm.
Entrepreneurship is one of the best ways to break generational poverty. It's one of the
Yes.
best ways of being fully expressed. And yet we have such um, inequities in
Mhm.
our startup ecosystem, not only in financial resources and capital, but in the social capital,
Mhm.
but also in the gender challenges.
Yeah.
And women feel this so often with the bro culture. And I know I'm going to be
Mhm.
sharing your book with folks who are struggling with that, because women, we have to have conversations with the men who,
Mhm.
and they tend to be, under 40, Nancy, that bring, that just have so misogyny in their
Mhm.
convo, because they've learned it in this
Mhm.
bro, dude,
Mhm.
and all of that.
Mhm.
And they have no idea they're making all these women really uncomfortable and pissed
Mhm.
off.
Mhm.
So I think that's going to be great, but also just in leveling the playing field somewhat in the conversations that are happening for our tech founders of
Mhm.
color, and for other folks. How can they not fight back, but be able to come back, because we do, in the startup ecosystem, there is good intention.
Yeah.
The allyship is really important, and we feel it, but we still aren't having those hard conversations about race.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about that and how your book can help folks in the
Yeah.
startup ecosystem?
Yeah, absolutely. So the protocol is really about holding people accountable. That's what it's asking us to do. And so if people aren't showing up like they need to, or how we would expect them to in a professional work environment, so that
Yeah.
we're not dealing with the misogyny, so we're not dealing with the discrimination, then we have to hold them accountable. And the protocol allows us to do that in a compassionate way.
Yeah.
Right? I want to hold you accountable, but I'm doing this because I want us to grow together. I'm not doing it because I want to alienate you. And I think that's the biggest thing, is that usually when because it has triggered anger in us, if we
Yeah.
don't recognize that, we're going to react instead of respond. And our goal is always to respond, which means that we control our feelings and emotions and
Yes.
they don't control us.
Did you hear that, feelings? I'm talking to my own feelings, okay? Because I have been really bad at controlling my
Mhm.
feelings.
Mhm.
Except, I have to say I did practice that as a mom, when the
Mhm.
kids go to the stage, I hate you, mom. You're the worst person in the world. And you go, look, I hear you, but I love you, and I hope you change your mind.
Yeah, at some point, please. Yeah.
But I can just keep going back to the uh the the RIR,
Mhm.
and how that can help us, if you can just stop, take a breath, and say, okay, how can
Yes.
I recognize that really upset me, and I just want to poke their eyes out or throw a
Mhm.
drink in their face,
Mhm.
but that's not going to work. That
Right.
I do want to hold them accountable. So how do I interrupt this conversation and then allow space for repair?
Yes.
Right. So allow them, Nancy, to be able to say, oh, and what have you heard on that side when people have
Yeah,
taken
so
the time?
the repair is actually a little bit different than that, because and it seems a little counterintuitive, but if I'm the one who interrupts, I'm also the one who has to repair. Because what you have to
Okay.
remember is that the person you interrupted, the reason they said or did what they did was because they didn't think it was a problem. And
Right.
so when you interrupted that, it became a problem. That was you holding them accountable for whatever they said or did. So the repair says, how do I come back, whether it's a day later, a week later, a month later, the next time we're in community together, and actually re engage And because what happens is that when you have a conflict, when you interrupt, there's a strong tendency, unless you live in the same house, right,
Right.
to kind of get distance between
Yeah.
you. So
Water under the bridge and just
yeah,
stay over
yeah.
here. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I'm not gonna deal with it because now I'm embarrassed, or I don't know, whatever feeling comes up for you. And so repair says that then it's, if I interrupt it, then I come back and I re-engage. So say, Andy, you and I had an issue, and we talked about it, and it was a good conversation, but there was a level, it was uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And so the next time I see you, sometimes the re-engagement can simply be just, hey, Andy, how's it going? You want to grab a cup of coffee? But what that signals to you is that we're okay. It
Yes.
signals that, okay, that happened, because I think in our minds, we start to blow it out of proportion and we think we can't recover. And because we have been conditioned in society not to engage in conflict, to actually avoid it, that when we do have it, we think that we've had a fight. And it's not a fight. It's life. It's life happening, and we just had a bump, and we're getting over it. And so by me re-engaging with you, I'm letting you know it's okay. And sometimes that re-engagement is like, let's learn together. Maybe there's something that we can do. I have a colleague, and he does similar work. He's a white man, and I share this because after 9/11, he had a very strong reaction to Muslims, and it was unreasonable to the point where he was on a plane with his wife, and he heard Arabic, and he literally made the pilot turn the plane around, and they got off. So he didn't ask that other people got off. They got off because his wife was having she couldn't handle it. And so he got to use the protocol, and that's using the protocol on the intrapersonal, because all these things are connected. Like I engage with you on this interpersonal.
Excuse me.
Oh, bless you.
Thank you.
But the intrapersonal is also impacted, because I've got to always look at my own beliefs and my own expectations that get in my own way. And so he literally, he did a cultural plunge as a challenge from me, and he went to a mosque and engaged with the Muslim. I'm not using the right term, but the leader of the mosque, and ended up having a friendship. They ended up having talking, and then now they have lunch weekly, and it's helping him through contact to really reevaluate his own fears and his own issues. And this is the power of the protocol, because if we approach it with curiosity, that's part of it, and we approach with this intent to understand, then we lean into places willing to be a little bit more vulnerable, but understanding that the repair can actually lead to a much deeper connection than we ever had before. And I will say that repair can also be divorce.
Yeah.
Right. So it's not
100.
Repair doesn't mean, we think repair and we fix it, and we think fix it means it works. But sometimes fixing it means that we have to let it go. Right.
I'm so happy you brought that up too, because folks, you don't need to stay in a relationship that's not good or healthy.
Yeah. And that's a work relationship or a personal relationship. Right.
Oh yeah. Just don't be, if you've done your part for managing accountability, where you have made the efforts of repair, and you're still getting slapped around and shamed and all of that, and people trying to make you feel bad about who you are and who you be, boom. You are wanted somewhere else, and you can belong somewhere else. And as far as your example too of turning the plane around, that we all know that really wasn't his fear. His fear was not of Muslims. At the end of the day, his fear was something that happened probably in childhood that just was triggered by 9/11, and Muslims became his target. Exactly. Oh, this is such a powerful conversation. I am, just for those who are tuning in, folks come in and out a lot during the conversation. Be sure to put #StartupLife in the comment section, and you'll be entered to win a free copy of Nancy's amazing book, Let's Talk About Race, a framework for having conversations that build bridges, strengthen relationships, and set clear boundaries. And boy, people talk about setting those boundaries all the time, Nancy, but that's easier said than done. I have, I always like to ask these questions. And of course, a beautiful brain like yours, I'd love to know, while you have been a founder, of course you have felt inadequate. Of course you have had moments where you just said, why bother? Or why am I doing this? I'm not good enough. How did you shift your mindset? And what can you share with other founders who are going through a tough time like that?
I actually really started looking for mentors, and people that I could talk to that have these experiences. And sometimes you just need people just to, to be your cheerleader, to just say you can do it.
Yeah.
Because there are times that I felt very, very alone in this process, even with because my sister had her own law firm. So she, even though she was a co-founder, she was more the money and the legal. And so she was a very small part of what was happening. And so really finding people out there that I could talk to that could give me some advice. And I think that was probably harder than the capital for me, right? The
Yes.
financial capital was finding people who could who had this experience and who could give me some, real sage advice about how to move through some things.
Right.
And also I'm just pretty damn stubborn. I mean, honestly, I think the benefit of having been a pro athlete is that I don't quit. I work. It's like, and I'm that fly. I'd like harder,
All right.
and
Where were you a pro athlete?
I played volleyball in Belgium, in Dominican Republic, and in
There we
England.
go.
Yeah,
Yeah, it does. That helps you a lot on
yeah,
so many levels. Hey,
yeah.
we've got a great question from Brittany Dean. Brittany, thank
Mm.
you so much. And be sure to put hashtag startup life into the comment section so we can enter you into the free book today. Brittany's asking, what message could you send out to encourage those who do not want to be educated on race to go and learn more?
Well, so the message I would say is that, the title of my book is a little provocative, and it's because it's also my passion of my work. But that's why it says "and other hard things," is literally because it's about how to have any conversation. And it's also about how to interrupt, organizationally. How do you interrupt those policies and procedures? Like who gets hired, who gets promoted, how do you get up there? And so
Right.
the protocol is actually applicable on all those levels. And so I talk about race because that's my passion, but the protocol is not about race. It's about compassionate dialogue. So the protocol would be applicable for anybody who wants to talk about anything that's difficult, where they're not sure how to engage, and
Well,
at
for
any level.
example, yeah, and Brittany, I'm wondering if you're feeling this too. Like, oh, well, the only reason Nancy's working here is because of affirmative action.
Mm.
I mean, that's somebody who doesn't want to learn about race.
Hmm.
What do you say? But listen, here's some great books out there. The 1619 Project,
Yeah.
great book. There's some other great books out there. I have a whole list.
So the one thing, yeah, so I get what I say is, oh, there's so much. So
Yeah.
that's a trigger for me, right? So
Yep.
that's a trigger.
Yep.
And so if I'm walking myself through them, I recognize I'm triggered. I'm frustrated because I can't believe we're still having this. And then my
Yes.
question would be, one of the things I would ask if I were using a protocol would be, what makes you think I'm not qualified?
Right.
What's your evidence that I'm not qualified? Right. And
Right.
so that's how the protocol works. But when Brittany, again, I see your message. The encouragement is about, um, we are divided. And so how can you point out what is obvious in what's happening in our
Mhm.
country?
Yeah.
And then how do we build more of a argument that says, it's going to take us getting involved to start to educate ourselves, to start
Right.
figuring, what is my opinion about this, what is
Right.
my opinion about what's happening, and for us to actually get involved to change this trajectory that we're on.
Right.
It's not
Right.
going to happen by us sitting on the sidelines.
No.
And so, it's really about, leaning in the repair pieces, the strategy about engaging. If someone really doesn't want to have the conversation, is there a way to join them in learning something together that might be like an entry level
Right.
thing? I wouldn't start with 1619. It seems
No,
to
of
be a
course
big
not.
trigger, a big trigger for
It just happens
people.
to be
But
one of my favorites. I
yeah,
love following
yeah.
her.
But I think starting with some things, and just having conversations, just like, talking about what's happening, sharing personal impact, because that person who doesn't want to talk about race, but if they're your friend and they care about you, they're going to support you in talking about things that you need to talk about. So again, that vulnerability. So if I've got a friend who doesn't want to talk about race, but if I share with my friend an experience that I'm having, they're going to talk to me about me.
Yes.
And so that's how you begin to enter them into the conversation, is talking about the impact something is having on you because they care about you.
Well, and I watched a wonderful show where a person brought into, they didn't know each other, is in Georgia, I believe. It might have been Richmond, Virginia, but it might have been Georgia. And a woman of color and a white woman. And the white woman was very passionate about the statues from the Confederate War. And then when she saw the reaction of the woman of color, she was like, oh, take those things down.
Yeah.
Like, there was that vulnerability, and yes, exactly. And connection and conversation around, well, this is why it hurts. Yeah. And so I think that's a beautiful part of your book. And speaking of your wonderful book, let's bring in, let me just, I've got to stop share here. Hold on. And I'm going to bring in to the screen, the StreamYard giveaway, and let's give away this book. So hang in there with me, everybody, while I quickly, I'm the host and I am the producer. So let me just bring this in, share. And I don't know why it says only 2 entries, because I know we have more, but I am going to do a draw and see if it brings in more. And if it doesn't, I'm sorry that happened. But there we go. It's coming down to and a 9.
That's cool.
Oh my gosh. And I am sorry. I have no idea what I may have done wrong to not get all of the hashtag startup lives in there. So I may go ahead and just, get you some other the folks a copy, because Aaron, I have no idea why yours didn't come in. I don't know why Nicole's didn't come in. Oh, well, I'll talk to my StreamYard people. But Mia, you are a winner, and I will make sure that you get a copy of Nancy's book. Anybody else, be sure I'll have the links in the show notes, how you can connect with Nancy, how you can get a copy of the book and learn more about her wonderful work in the world. Nancy, thank you so much for joining me for this impactful and actionable conversation. I know I learned a ton from this conversation. Any last thoughts before I pop you in the green room?
Oh, well, first, just thank you, Ande. I appreciate being able to be here. And, my last thoughts would be, we need to engage. We need to be in motion. And, and for anyone who's a founder, for anyone who is just trying to, really take that risk, go out there and do it, because, it's your idea. And if you think it's viable, it's worth giving it a go.
Absolutely. And, and be accountable. Use your RIR in having those conversations, and then also learn how to set your boundaries, because that's, again, the beauty of your book. And I'm just going to read this again. It's a framework for having conversations that build bridges, strengthen relationships, and set clear boundaries. And that's what we want. And we definitely want that in our startup world, because we're busy building, and we need to make sure that we're cohesive and honoring as we build our businesses.
Absolutely.
So, thank you, Nancy. I'm going to pop you in the green room and wrap everything up here. Oh, everybody, this was such a treat to have this conversation. Again, because we need to learn, how do we keep connected? And then we're so busy focusing on acquiring customers, acquiring capital, moving product, services, and getting everything out into the world and growing our business so it can stand on its own. Sometimes we don't have the hard conversations or set the protocol, as Nancy was so wonderful in saying and sharing with us how to do this. I know. And yay, Mia, you won. Okay, great. So anyway, thank you all for tuning in so much. Let me tell you who's coming on Tuesday to join us and share her incredible background and experience as a fab female founder and a mother of 3 humans, which she has on her LinkedIn as experience, raising 3 humans. I love this. It's Brandy Whalen. And Brandy is the co-founder of founder of Kitcaster, and it's a podcast booking agency that books podcast interviews for funded startup founders, entrepreneurs with exits, and C-suite execs. And this is so important, because newly minted founders, you need to quickly build credibility and social capital while building your business. And Brandy's going to show you how you're going to be able to create and build founder credibility through storytelling and amplify your social capital through guest interviews. Get more connections through conversations. That's why I have these great founders on the show here. This is a great media opportunity for founders to get it out. And this is why I love amplifying your businesses from the comment section. So never hesitate to share with me. I'm happy to amplify you out to the world. So until next time, we love to say here on the Startup Life Live show, one of my favorite quotes. I'll just take a moment, take a deep breath. Promise me you'll remember that you're braver You are braver than you believe, and you are stronger than you seem. And this founder journey is teaching you that. And as we say here in Boston, you're wicked smarter than you think. So you've got this, and I'm cheering you on and wishing you a delicious day wherever you are. Mwah! See you next time, everyone. Thanks for tuning in.